Hey everyone, Happy New Year. The numbers are in for Palmetto Trace for 2021. I'm Craig Duran with the Duran Group over at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. Um, I just want to stress, I want to get into the market and show you guys a little bit about what happened last year and more importantly, where things are now and where we think they're going. But I want to, before I do that, I'm going to get into the numbers pretty specifically for you. Think back to 2008 for just a minute before we do this. And if you remember, think about what you were doing in real estate or friends and family were doing in real estate and just how dramatic and intense in a negative way that market was. A lot of foreclosures. We all probably have some stories about people we know that had to endure that market, and there was a lot of pain in that market. But I want to stress just if you think back and remember while we were in that market, how it just felt like it was going to take forever to get out of it. I don't even think we were thinking about getting out of the market. It was a lot of times just trying to figure out how to get to the next day and the next day. It's a very different market right now. We've been sort of on easy street in the real estate market for over a year and a half, unless you're trying to buy something. Prices have been going up dramatically. If you're going to sell something, you hear a lot of stories about multiple offers very quickly. So I want to stress a few things. I see a lot of people making mistakes when they're selling over the last year, and in my opinion, leaving a little too much money on the table, substantial amount of money. So I want to give you a little overview of the market, where we are now, again, like I said, and where we think prices are headed, and just some strategies if you're thinking about doing anything in real estate. So first of all, to start out in Palmetto Trace, and we've got it broken down into the townhome section and the detached single family section for you. First of all, let's stay on the top of this chart for a minute and look just at the attached units. There was one less attached unit for sale. So if a buyer was trying to buy in Palmetto Trace back on Park Place, there were 5% fewer choices for them. The number that sold, look at this, is a pretty big number. 50% more of those were sold last year than the previous year. But what's even more interesting is that equated to 71% more volume because of the rate of appreciation. The average unit appreciated 14% in 2021. That only tells part of the story. We're much past the averages now. I'm going to show you that in a minute. When we look at detached single family homes, same story. Palmetto Trace still remains in high demand, and a lot of people want to get in there. 37%, there were 37% fewer opportunities for someone to buy a house in Palmetto Trace last year. There were 43 homes on the market in 2020. Only 27 came up to hit the market in 2021. That meant obviously there was 25% fewer sales just because there was fewer availability to buy, 13% less volume, of course, because there were less sales. But the average sales price there too, look, on average, went up 17%. Don't get too hung up on the average 14% and 17% yet, though. I'm going to show you specific pricing of what's happened recently, and those numbers are actually really higher. This is an important chart to understand if you want to get an understanding of the market in general. And a lot of you have probably seen this video already. I laugh because I go through this so many times, but it's a really important thing to understand. The red line here, this is looking at homes across Panama City Beach priced under $500,000. I know we have a few over 500 now in Palmetto Trace, but this is still a good barometer for us. So if we look at the red line, this is all I'm concerned with at this point. The red line represents the number of homes for sale at any given point. And this right here that I'm circling is the beginning of the pandemic. If someone decided they wanted to buy a house in Panama City Beach, less than 500,000 at the beginning of the pandemic, look at what happened to our supply month over month over month over month over month until about May of last year. If you were trying to buy something and you missed out on something, or you missed an opportunity, or you lost a bidding war or something like that, you would turn around. You actually had fewer and fewer and fewer choices. And so obviously the supply going down, plenty of demand. That's what's happening. That's why price appreciation has gone up so much. There was a slight increase May, June, July, August of last year. we thought maybe for a minute that this would turn in the other direction, but look, since September, it's actually as low as it's ever been. And the condo market was a little different. The condo market actually bottomed out in April of 2021, came up and hasn't caught back down that low yet. The housing market, since the pandemic, our housing market is as tight as it's been. If you look about this from a months of inventory standpoint, I laugh every time I tell this because I know a lot of you have heard this already, but remember, traditionally in real estate, months of inventory is a good way for us to assess hot or cold market. And then bear with me for a second. You'll understand why this is so important. Traditionally, 5 or 6 months, it would take 5 or 6 months to work through the whole process of selling a house. Seller calls a real estate office. We get the marketing together. We arrange for showings. We negotiate the contract with you, work through the closing process, closing. That whole process would take 5 or 6 months. I think it takes more like 4 or 5 months now because it doesn't take us as long to get marketing in place. We don't have to wait 30 days to run a magazine ad. But if 4 or 5 months of inventory is normal or neutral, then anything less than that, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, will be a hotter market, a seller's market. The longer we stay in that market, the more likely we are to see price appreciation, things, multiple offers, things like that. Look at where we've been in the overall housing market, and we're going to look at Palmetto Trace specifically next. We haven't been, at the beginning of the pandemic, we hit 6.25 months of inventory. Since then, we've been doing nothing but decrease. We raised again here recently, but look, in November, we were under a month of inventory. December, 1.09 months of inventory. Theoretically, that means we would sell out of houses in Panama City Beach in a month. It's really, really intense. And I, again, remind you back to 2008, when markets can change, markets don't stay forever. We don't see anything in the very near future that's changing this market, but this is a really, really intense market. And one of the mistakes, well, we'll get to that in a second. I see a lot of people making mistakes when they're selling recently. I'll tell you my little secret on that in a minute. Let's look at this chart for Palmetto Trace. It's a little more volatile, obviously, because there's less data, but look at the beginning of the pandemic, red line, it's kind of trickled down, generally trickling down, just like the housing market. And look at this, months of inventory. It's just incredible. More months in the last year than not. Months of inventory in Palmetto Trace has been less than 1 month. That's really dramatic. And look, let's look at pricing. And this is since December 1st. Let me make sure I have that right. Yeah, so going back to December 1st of this year, let's look at pricing. And this is where those averages are going to be blown out of the water a little bit. We have a sale in Park Place on one of the 3 bedrooms at $279. We have a 2-bedroom sale at $289.9. That's closed. We now have a 3-bedroom that's asking $315, and it's under contract. And there are no attached units for sale currently. Look at houses, same story. We have a 3-2 under contract at $415, asking $415. They're under contract. We're working on 207 Biltmore, Jacob and I, $495. It's under contract at a very, very strong price. 535 over on Kensington, had 3 multiple offers. It's under contract. There's nothing else to buy in Palmetto Trace. If you're thinking of selling in 2022, I want you to keep in mind a couple of different things. If you have the ability or the flexibility, we're in a bit of a perfect storm right now. You're looking at 0 months of inventory, so supply is as good as it can get for a seller. You have no competition. We know that there's this extreme demand when you look at all these charts and see that there's just nothing to buy and people are buying. In that $535,000 house, there are 3 offers. Make sure when you're selling, if you're selling, you give the marketing time to work. There's so much demand in the market. As soon as you whisper there's a house for sale, we're going to have people that are going to be interested in it. Give your time marketing work. Think about coming soon campaigns. You want marketing time to get out to as many people as possible so you can have as much of a bidding war as possible to drive the price up. The other thing, the mistake I'm seeing a lot of last year, especially in the housing market, so many people who buy houses will be getting loans, which will mean there will be an appraisal involved. And it's very difficult for an appraiser to appraise something, even if the appraisers know what's going on in the market, appraisers have to use sales that are closed. So if you're asking 450 for something and the comparable sales are 400, it's very difficult for an appraiser to not write something much lower than 450. You have to have strategies to be able to close higher sales prices, like this one especially, that we see at 535. If there's a loan involved, it'll be really interesting to see what happens and if there are strategies there to be able to get that closed. We do that all the time. I think last year we set 26 or 27 records. You have to have strategies to be able to get a buyer to be able to close on something when appraised values are lower. It's very possible, but we're in the kind of market where that's doable. Make sure you're not underpricing is the short version. I'm seeing too often prices coming in too low. We have too much demand in this market that this isn't the kind of market really to hit the home run and set a record. Condition matters, of course. Location matters. All those things matter. So that plays into it, but don't be afraid to push your pricing. There's just too much demand in this market. That's it. I was going to talk a little bit about timing and strategy. I think the one thing we're watching in the market, I guess, is that if we start to see inventory levels, supply levels creep up, that could start to show the signs of this moving the other way. And that can happen pretty quickly, especially if something dramatic happens, like something happens in the stock market. That could put the brakes on demand a little bit. If something happened nationally or globally in the economy, of course, that can affect things. The one key thing we're watching in housing is interest rates ticking up. In this price range, interest rates matter a lot more than they do in like $1 million plus. A lot of buyers in this price range will be getting loans, and so their monthly payment is going to be based on what's happening with the interest rate. It's almost a sure thing that interest rates will be ticking up over the next year or two. In the grand scheme of things, they'll still be historically low rates, but it will still affect some people and can affect communities like Palmetto Trace a little bit. The other thing to keep in mind long term, especially, I was in a meeting the other day with the senior vice president of the St. Joe Company, and I saw the renderings for the hospital that's coming in right around the corner. It's phenomenal plans for what's going on there. I think that the things to watch for locally, that happening over the next couple of years will certainly impact the local market. Ward Creek, you're already seeing the land being cleared up Highway 79 for Ward Creek, which is going to be another version of Palmetto Trace, Breakfast Point kind of planned community. When you drop in that many new homes close to this neighborhood, Palmetto Trace could start to feel pretty old when you're starting to put in brand new homes later this year, early next year. That's something to watch out for. If you know who's thinking about buying out there, we're going to be out there helping sell those. So if you know anybody, get in touch with me if you've got someone that wants to be out of Ward Creek. But those are some things that will affect value a little bit in Palmetto Trace. So be on the lookout for that. If all of a sudden we have all those new homes to sell, pricing in Palmetto Trace is going to be limited somewhat by what goes on in that other community. The hospital certainly will add value for certain people, especially. So that's a good thing. But if you're selling this year, just think about and watch what's going on in the market right now. Is the perfect storm of seasonality. We're getting ready to come into spring selling season. Start your marketing a little early and be aggressive on price. You have no competition, and we have serious demand. I know most of you that are watching this are on our e-alert system. Jacob and I can set you up real easily for a system that will send you an email anytime a house comes up for sale, changes price, goes under contract, or closes, it sells. And it will send you the actual sales price and closing date, not what your neighbor says they sold the house for. But at any rate, we can set that up for you. There's no charge. There's no obligation. And in fact, we can even batch that. If you want all the information immediately, you can have it immediately. If you want to wait and get it once a week or once a month or something like that, we can do that for you. And we can do that anywhere. If you want other neighborhoods or other condo buildings or just 3 bedrooms, whatever it is you're trying to keep track of, it comes straight from our realtor system. You can have access to it. So let us know. We can set you up on that system. In the meantime, I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions ever, Jacob and I are available anytime. Happy New Year, and thanks for watching.